DC High Volume, Batman. The Dark Knight's definitive DC Comics stories, adapted directly for audio for the very first time. Fear. I have to make them afraid.
He's got a motorcycle. Get after him or I'll have you shot.
What do you mean blow up the building?
From this moment on, none of you are safe. New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Bran K Comic Hour with your hosts, Andrew Glonner
and Chris Ramos.
And tonight we are joined by our guest host,
Taylor Raymond.
Taylor, thanks for coming on the show, and welcome to Bam Pow Comic Hour podcast. And so tonight we are covering Y: The Last Man, and we are covering the first two major volumes. So that's like the first 24 issues of the series, and we're just here to kind of cover it. This has also been adapted as a TV show, so we might say like what's the differences between the show and just kind of do a little deep dive into the series.
And sometimes we just read a little piece of the whole pie. So this time we read about 24 issues out of 60. Is that what you said? Something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot. It's a big story, but
we have I have the omnibus in front of us, and it's thicker than a phone book, especially today's standards.
Can't talk about
60.
phone books.
What's a phone book?
Have you seen a phone book before, Taylor? Okay.
It's like a double cheeseburger.
Absolutely. And so one of the reasons why, I mean, we've always wanted to cover this book, but also like when me and Taylor have had conversations off the air, we're like, what comic or what series would you be interested in? And we were both talking about Y: The Last Man. So I was like, oh, I have this book. We should go, because you've seen the show.
I've seen the show, yes.
And me and Chris have never seen the show.
Yeah, and I know the show came out, and I thought, oh, I wanted to watch that, but then I didn't want to watch it before I read the comic, and then I'm like, the comic wasn't on my list until now, so you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Well, and I read the show not knowing it was a comic, so
Right. It's very different perspectives, because like you could say Hulu made the show. I think they were the producers of the show, and they made it probably for the comic book readers. But then if they can get somebody or draw it in for somebody who has never read the comic, if they can go read it or explore the world, like that's their win. Absolutely. That's almost like a goal for like a movie.
Yeah, I mean,
or a show.
Taylor,
or
you're probably
property.
seeing this on a lot of shows of like, that looks interesting. And then you find out it is a comic or it was a book or it was a series or what, and I think it's like a weird thing that they're trying to do is connect both of these pop culture items, but then also just saying, if we merge them, then, we're kind of tapping into both audiences and you don't have to think too hard on an original content because one or the other is already there. Right. So, but it's usually the comic comes before the show.
Yeah.
And I feel like most of the time they end up disappointing someone by trying to combine the two.
Yeah. You can't get around that. I mean,
fair point.
As comic book, it's interesting though, because to me, like as a book reader, I get images and thoughts of the book that are different than anything they could put on the TV. But as a comic reader, you kind of already have a lot of the visuals there. So sometimes it's not too far of a stretch.
Right.
And you're not too disappointed because you're sort of like, I already saw most of this drawn out.
Absolutely. We have different expectations as the comic book reader, and viewers of the TV show have very different expectations of what are they getting into, and then there's more to it. There's like 2 years of material.
So when did the Y: The Last Man start?
Absolutely. So the series started in 2002. Yes, September of 2002, and went till March of 2008. And like we've been saying, it's a 60 issue run.
I feel like that's a long time ago.
Yeah,
it is.
absolutely.
Like,
but before we do a hardcore dive into the series, Taylor, what are your comic book origins? This is, we've been kind of saying in the pre-show, this is your first book?
This is the first comic book I've ever read.
Okay. And why do you think that is?
I tend to speed through books. So they always felt like not worth reading because they were so short and I wouldn't get into them.
Sure.
I would
like a single issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to read novels that are really long, 400 pages. So I actually can spend some time on them.
Okay.
I read the first volume in a night.
Right. Of this book. Yes.
So
of course. What are some of your favorite reads or some books that stick out to you?
most of what I've been reading lately has been like dystopian novels. I just read the H2O series where it's acid rain and a teenager trying to live through any kind of water not touching her.
Yeah, that's relatable.
The ultimate. Yeah.
You can go outside. Oh, acid rain.
That's a story that needs to be told.
Right. Who thought of that? Like, oh man, we haven't heard that story before.
But yeah, they actually just made a show off of it, but it's only in Dutch, so I've not watched it.
Oh,
Like-
yeah, that's okay. Dutch and European.
Dutch have embraced
Okay,
it.
yeah,
Well, and it sounds like too, like, I mean, a lot of times the basic premise of a comic is even just like, this is the general pitch. Like there's this one sort of hook, right? And then you build a story around that. And a lot of comics just see if it sticks. Like, I don't know. What do you think? Should we keep going? And Bran K. Vaughan, I mean, his series are long, whatever he's working on. He's got a epic story up his sleeve all the time. So
right.
I wasn't surprised by the length of this, but it is kind of like, it is sort of a quicker read than most comics, I would have to say. So like,
Sure.
you know, if you're thinking of jumping into it, it is, like you said, it's just sort of, if you condense it down, we were kind of looking up in the pre-show, like how long of an actual book would this be?
Yeah.
And, you know, while the giant omnibus is a different beast, but 20 issues of this is not a lot of actual words,
Right.
but it's more of like, what are the scenes that he's trying to work through? And, you know, I always look at like, why are they showing this scene? Like, what's the point of this and how does
Sure.
it relate to the bigger story?
Absolutely. And I was looking, like, our last time we talked about Bran K. Vaughan was about 2 years ago. Yeah, it's actually about 2 years ago to the date.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was April 28th of 2023 was Saga. And Saga is his like really big fantasy series that's not so much post-apocalyptic, but very futuristic fantasy. And so very different tone.
Otherworldly.
Yeah, otherworldly.
Yeah.
Very much different vibe. I would say this is a vibe almost like Walking Dead.
Yeah, I would compare it to that.
Yeah, except a little bit of inverse of the premise. I guess Taylor, since you've seen the show and you've read the book, would you like to pitch the summary?
I think the show almost happened before, like not before the book, but like you get into like the first, say like 10 pages, and then the show happens, and then the comic almost continues.
Gotcha.
Because I think the show, if I haven't watched it in a few years, but I'm pretty sure it ends with him ending up at his mom's in Washington.
Sure.
Which is like the first book.
Yeah. Which is like not very far into the comics, but also I was surprised that you see so many other different perspectives in the comics that were not shown at all in the show. Absolutely.
And I'll just kind of go into kind of what this book is about. So it's essentially they're living in a normal everyday society when all of a sudden this mass plague that is odorless, airless, to our knowledge, nobody can physically see it.
And it's super modern. It's like in the 2015 or something like that.
Sure.
I mean, it's kind of like nowish.
Okay. And in 2002.
Now-ish.
So it could, now. Yeah.
Close.
Now, yesterday.
We're
things
going
like
to
that.
meet in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they're living about their everyday lives like nothing's ever happened. And then all of a sudden, plague happens. And all of a sudden, all people or males with a Y chromosome die. They just die. They just fall over. It's very painful. As you see in the very early issues, very painful. Nobody can foreseeably save these people. And it's like a massive eradication of half the human population. All except for two male figures that we know about currently, which is Yorrick and his monkey Ampersand.
And that's,
otherwise it's an all-female society that have survived and have not been harmed by this plague.
I was kind of looking up because like at the beginning when you really first figure this out, they kind of went through a little synopsis. Let me see if I can find it.
I say I have the back of the dust jacket as well.
Oh maybe not. All right, I
Yeah.
guess I'm gonna have to paraphrase from my brain,
Sure. what we
which is a scary thing to do. But it when it says that all the males in the entire globe like instantly just are gone.
Yeah.
Here it is. It's kind of interesting when they put it together. They called it a gendercide, which I thought was kind of cool.
Oh, right.
And it says instantly exterminated 48% of the global population. 495 of the Fortune 500 CEOs are now dead, as are 99% of the world's landowners.
Yeah.
95% of all commercial pilots, truck drivers, and ship captains died, as did 92% of all violent felons. Internally, 99% of all mechanics, electricians, and construction workers are now deceased.
I think the mammal.
It's just like, wow.
when it even went down to the very detail of like the mammals
Yeah.
and like all the animal life dying because they had a Y chromosome or like a male
Well,
masculine.
and they talked later about how long like reproduction cycles are, and by this point, all of this animal are dead now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and then on the very last thing, it says 85% of all government representatives are now dead, as are 100% of Catholic priests, Muslim imams, and Orthodox Jewish rabbis.
Yep.
Wow.
So it's like if you look at that as a religious aspect, like
you could dissect it from any angle.
Yeah, like so. Number one, males are gone. So what does that mean? Well, it means like most religions are just toast, right? So it was just an interesting way to put this into perspective, and I thought it was neat. They did the math on it, so to speak.
Right.
And introducing us to the main character was kind of like, you always kind of look like, who is the audience living through, right?
Sure.
Like, and like, are we living through him? And like you said, there's quite a few characters in this book that you can sort of switch perspectives. So you're not always necessarily rooting for him.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
That was
I
my
mean,
take.
okay, interesting. Because I guess so. And then as the story continues on, Yorrick is like freaking out. He's like, oh my gosh, I got to find out survival. And his mom works in the government, and she basically hires they find a geneticist and somebody to protect Yorrick and to go save the male species of sorts.
They want to try and clone him.
They clone him. Yep, that's why. So then they have a facility out the opposite end of America. So they start in DC. They're going to California to this other lab facility.
Well, they went somewhere else first.
Then it was destroyed, of course. But so their journey, as we have seen throughout these first two volumes, is how to get there. Is the journey to get there.
Now, Taylor, did you find yourself like rooting for Yorrick, or did you find yourself like kind of latching on to some of the other characters?
I've always liked Yorrick.
Yeah.
He still holds as a main character in here.
Yes, for sure. I think Agent 355, she had more of a role in this one for sure.
Okay.
She was introduced in the show. I do remember that she was.
Yeah.
And Ampersand plays a lot smaller role in the
monkey.
comic. So,
Monkey.
the monkey.
So you have the man, the monkey, and then you have like
the special agent.
like a special agent 355.
Yes.
Right. And the geneticist doctor's name is Dr. Allison Man.
Yes.
And she kind of she tried to clone her. She tried to give birth to her clone.
Correct.
I remember
you don't
that.
find that out. That's a spoiler.
Spoiler. Okay, she gave birth to a clone. You don't find out till
Okay, forget we said that.
Yeah, but that's how wild or in depth you're like, what? Okay, yeah, and you just have to kind of accept some of these things that are happening. I guess there isn't a ton of like terminology that you have to know, which I kind of like because sometimes we get bogged down by some of that.
And the whole like how and why did it happen like isn't really
We don't get
revealed,
there.
which is great.
No,
It's
that's
just
the where
keeps you going.
it's kind of similar to The Walking Dead, where The
Yeah.
Walking Dead, I don't know if they ever revealed why the zombie apocalypse like happened. But that's something you're always thinking about. You're always thinking, how did this happen?
And they're always searching for
And
it.
they're always
Everyone's
searching
always
for it.
asking.
Yeah.
So I think that's another trait that this book like shares, that is
And-
why did the plague happen?
Well, that's like
Yeah.
helps you keep reading of like they're going to figure this out, aren't
Right.
they?
Yeah.
And you just sort of are brought along on this journey,
Yes.
which I'm glad it became sort of a cross country journey.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
They run
that kind of
into
idea.
other weird characters.
Right. I guess
Who
that's
was your
another.
favorite other weird character?
Yeah.
I liked I don't remember their names, the ones that blocked the highway, and there was like 5 of them
yes.
that tried
Yes.
to kill everyone.
Yup. Right.
Well,
I like the mechanic.
The
Yeah,
mechanic was good too.
Yup.
So I thought it was just kind of, it lended strength to the story just to say that. So the first volume, and not to jump around a little bit, but the first volume you're reading and it's sort of like, okay, these are like day by day happenings, right? Like it felt like, okay, this is maybe
Yes.
within a week. And then
Mhm.
occasionally you'd get a little timestamp saying like,
yeah, because
2 days later, but
sure.
then,
It was
at the-
very condensed.
yeah.
Though.
And at the end of volume 1, when you go into volume 2, it says 1
To-
year later.
Yes.
And
I was
it
like,
skips forward a
yeah,
lot.
you're like, wow, this is okay.
Yeah,
he's
there's
been
a lot of
out
flash
there,
forward, flash back.
So then you realize like, wow, they have been on this journey for a full year. Okay. So it's,
It's after the theater.
I think it was just a way for them to say, we're going to progress this story just as fast as we can, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And like any good Bran K like story, he does such excellent world building that you get so immersed and invested in what's going on.
Well, especially with his like character groups, because
Yes.
he likes to just say, like, even I got that from Saga, is that he says this group
Mm.
acts like this and is like this. And then
Sure.
this group over here now is the Amazons, and this group is the
Right.
forest
And
people.
that helps with like the characterizations of each group.
Yeah.
So that way you kind of have that retention.
Well,
too.
like in this book, they're all still human. So
Mhm.
then you're like, well, what
Sure.
would happen? Like, what exactly would happen if all the males disappeared?
Yeah.
Would the women instantly just start banding together into these like safety groups? And that's kind of what happened,
Yeah.
One of them was they banded together just because they were all politicians. So
Right.
they're like, we're just the politician group now.
Or the prison
Yes.
group.
Yeah, the
I like
prison
the
group,
prison
right.
group. Yeah. Yeah.
And you just like, you band together with the people who are around you, I guess. So like,
Right.
where else are you going to go? You kind of go into survival mode and you just look to your left and look to your right and you say, this is us now.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think and then when they introduce like space and
my God.
what do like astronauts think, because there was some surviving astronauts that were of
Yeah,
male.
that was cool.
And then
Yeah.
when they came in, did they live? Yeah. Nope. Not really.
Well, it was cool too
But
to
one
say,
of them was pregnant. So
Yeah.
but like, if you look at that, it's like, okay, let's say we had this huge plague calamity, something on
Yep.
Earth. And then the International Space Station still had 12 astronauts up there.
Right.
Like, do they just stay up there? Like,
Yeah.
like,
do they start their own colony?
hey, there's some terrible stuff going on down here.
Are they affected by the same thing? Is it the atmosphere of the Earth that it's affecting it, or is it
Solar
something
rays or
solar
something.
radiation?
which in this it wasn't.
Right?
Technically they made
Yeah.
it back alive, but
Yeah, and then they just burned.
they
it
blew up. But,
yeah, they blew up. Right.
but then she has a baby that's a male and fine. So
Right. That is the other one of the other surviving ones. I almost forgot about that. Yes, and there's so many different components that he does a really good job of like, oh, we could go in this direction. Let's explore what would happen here.
And like, did it just happen in the story just because, or is he kind of come back to that later on?
Sure.
Right.
What genre do you think this series is? I thought that would be a good question because
Yeah.
I was a little stumped by it. I almost want to say political thriller.
Yeah. I mean,
It starts out like that,
Yeah.
but then it turns into like a survival, like action
survival
series.
action
Post-
adventure.
yeah.
like, I wouldn't say,
Post-apocalyptic for
Yeah,
sure.
of
but-
course. That's kind of like the overarching.
like, it's not horror.
No.
Okay. And it's really not science fiction so much. I
No,
think
it's very
just-
slim.
Yeah. Like, it just seems like this is one of those, world ending calamity things, like almost like a what if, like,
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
would happen?
Yes.
Like you said, what would happen if all the water was poison? Well, okay, that's an interesting, where could we start
Right?
the story?
Or what if the world is in water? Hey, water world.
There's a different book that I've read that there's no more food left in the world.
Oh,
So-
right. That would be another good one
Like-
too. Wow.
Time's up, everyone.
Right.
So
Yep.
it makes it interesting.
for this one, I mean, everyone sort of has either their own mission or they're just like followers, because you get a lot of those
Sure.
groups show up and you see kind of like the way they're drawing some of them or the way they're acting. They're just sort of like, I don't know, this
They're
is
just
where I
there.
am.
Right.
I guess I'll follow along.
Yes.
And then, people ultimately, and you see this in the comic a lot, they ultimately end up just resorting to just violence, just like
Sure.
base.
Yep.
And
And then most of the time they try to seek out like peaceful resolutions, or like, hey, we can work this out. Enough people have died already. That worked for about 5 minutes. And then it's just chaos evolves.
this kind of reminds me of Lord of the Flies.
Interesting.
A
That's
little
one of those
bit.
books I still
No?
haven't
I haven't read it.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, we haven't dated you,
Gosh.
Ramos.
Jeez. All right, that'll be our next
What are they
review.
teaching you in high school?
But Lord of the Flies.
Some people did in my high school. Some people read it.
Very simply, it was a boat full of like a school, like a boys' school, and it crash lands on a deserted island. And so they immediately start forming sort of groups. Like there's like the tougher boys, there are the weaker boys, there's the boys who are like, hey, I was raised hunting and I can go hunt for food. And then so everyone, like, the question is, what do you have to add to this like new society? And, like,
What's
and
your
they-
role?
Yes, and they
Yeah.
almost instantly start ranking each other based on like who is stronger and who's
Yeah.
weak.
Mhm.
And so like in this, I mean, I don't know how long it took, but it looks like it took under a week for most of the women to be like, who's the strongest and who's the weakest, right?
God.
And
I could see that.
so I
Let's
don't know,
Go
the
in
way
survival mode.
yeah, and the way I was reading it was like Yorrick is a cool character, but you almost start getting caught up with some of the other characters,
Of course.
and he sort of like loses his luster here and there
Sure.
because
Yep.
I think
yeah.
He's
they
infallible.
like they overplay that like he's the last male, and you're like, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But then you're like, what else is he bringing to the table? Because now all these other people are like,
yeah.
Oh yeah,
really-
he's just there. He's just the man.
Yeah. Yep.
he's
Yup.
the one to break
All the women
norm.
are doing all the things.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
He's just breaking the like,
Yep.
oh wow, all the men are
he's,
dead.
he's an escape artist. He
Yeah.
has that going for him. He has.
Except he can't escape the handcuffs at
But he
one
was-
point.
yeah,
Or
wasn't-
the dominatrix.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man.
He wasn't-
That's how we ended the second volume. Was on the dominatrix.
There's multiple things he can't escape that we learn.
And ultimately, the dominatrix taught him a valuable life lesson.
Well,
Yes.
yes.
I mean, he was a okay escape artist. How's that?
Yeah. Yup. So he can do that. He's an escape artist, does amateur magic
And he's in love with his girlfriend.
from Australia.
No, she
Yeah.
moved to Australia.
Or she moved to she moved to Australia, but that's where like when the end of the world happens, that's where she was at, I believe.
Yeah.
I just feel like he was like just there to break the idea that every male is dead,
Yes.
and they're like, aha,
Right.
aha. So it kind of led the reader along of like, is there hope? Is there something that he has? Like, does he have the ultimate cure? Does he have? Is he
Right.
immune to whatever this was?
Right. I'm watching The Last of Us, and that's where the girl character, she's like, "Oh, I'm immune to the disease." That when she finds that out, it's like, "Oh, that's her thing."
Yeah.
Right. So York not necessarily doesn't have that we know about so far. But obviously he's kind of owning up as like, I'm the last man. Like, what are you going to do to me? Like, is it some people are like, I'm just going to eradicate you. Or some
Yeah.
people are like, I'm just going to capture you and throw you in his shelter.
So we read like a third of this whole story.
Right.
So somewhere in there, hopefully they answer all these questions. But
yeah.
we-
it took 6 years.
we don't- yeah,
Maybe
we-
we can find out Yorrick has some talents to
Yes.
actually bring to the table.
Right. And then he has sarcasm. He's very written very sarcastically, and to the point where it's like it's good, like off kilter, like humor. Just because this also could be like a very serious subject book, and I think just that playful banter really helps the dialogue.
yeah, I mean, they could have made this very like
Could have been sad and depressing.
super sad.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they could have just been like, there is no hope at all. And
Right.
I feel
very
like every
bleak,
at least
like-
couple
yeah.
pages, I was laughing at something Yorrick
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
It's like Mad Max for the world.
Right.
Yes.
But he is I I don't know. He's kind of like that quippy, sort of like nothing bothers me guy.
Yep.
But
Until
then-
it does, and then it
Yeah.
eats
Yeah.
away and eats away and
And
eats
then like
away,
behind
and
the
then it just
scenes,
comes out.
it
Yeah.
does bother him. So it's like, okay, he's got some vulnerability, which is
Absolutely. I think of all the semi relationships that he kind of falls into.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, but I want to stay faithful to my girlfriend. She may or may not be alive. Like hasn't had a phone conversation. The internet's is down throughout the whole thing. So he can't really communicate with her. He's all relying on his own personal faith.
Half of IT is down.
Yeah, which is kind of hard to think about today's age. Like, what would
And
we do?
He does kiss one girl who then dies. So.
Right.
Well, and he also just kind of gets dragged along by
Yeah.
these girls. Like,
Oh, yeah.
like he doesn't openly put up too much of a fight. They're just like,
No.
they're like, come on, we're leaving. And he just like, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Your mom said we were finding
Yeah.
this
Right.
geneticist
Oh.
and we were going here.
Right.
Do you think he is like wishy-washy a little bit? Like, he's
I
got
guess
a
after
tough-
so much time, like they said, what, year or two has passed since the beginning?
Yeah.
yeah,
And
a
maybe
year.
the last saw him, like, I don't know, if you had no way to communicate, I don't know, things might happen.
and
It's hard to keep that faith.
well,
or
and like
that-
you don't know
or those
where
standards.
to go or
Right.
what to do, but it sounds like the people he has around him have a plan. So he's like,
Sure.
I'll just go with your plan.
I don't
And
have
Right.
a better option, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go with you.
Mhm.
He knows he can't be alone,
Right.
and he did hook up with, a group that somewhat protects him. so-
Yeah, absolutely. And like Agent 355 is pretty much his bodyguard, but then there's also like she's not Secret Service, but it's like within the Secret Service.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
couple levels of secrecy that make things happen. The culprit ring, they call it.
So he always has that sort of like dread of like what's the next threat. I was
Yes.
actually surprised, well, maybe a little, but just like some of the violence that's in here,
Sure.
right? Like
And I guess
it was
Quite
just-
a bit.
So
it was just like
What-
sudden too.
yeah, so I guess are we in agreement that the villain of the series is kind of the Amazons?
At one point,
It's not
yes.
very a central villain, but it's an antagonist
I
that
feel like-
always they're searching for him.
They're always going after a villain, but I feel like it changes throughout the series.
Okay.
Because like at
Yeah.
the one point it's the Amazons, and then at the other point it's the military girls with the
Oh
astronauts,
yes, was
the
it
ones
the
from
Israelis?
the Middle East, yeah.
I think it was the Israelis.
And then it turns to the ones that blocked off the highway.
right.
So like after they defeat one, there's always another one.
I absolutely.
It's like the villain of the week.
Yes.
Kind of a villain of the week, but it's treated a little bit more seriously. I think of it as an arc. Like, here is the villain of this arc. The Amazons are kind of the overarching, but within that, there's like here's who we're up against this time, or who's kidnapped York this time.
Which it probably happened that they kind of defeated him at the end of one of the comics or something.
Sure,
But, since we
but
had
it's
him-
not very predictable. I think
Yeah.
the writer has very different outcomes of like, here's how I want him to get captured this time, or maybe one like for 355, or the doctor gets kidnapped.
Each
something
group's
happens
very
to them.
different.
Yes, so I like that. That they always keep changing and always keeps you like invested in the story and like,
Yeah.
oh, how does it? Because otherwise, you could end up in a trope of like, oh, he always gets kidnapped. We always have to rescue him. He is the damsel in
Oh,
distress.
yeah.
Yeah.
The villain is
Definitely.
the lack of a goal.
The journey keeps going.
Yes.
When does it end?
The
feel like-
villain is the journey.
At that point, they would have given up. It was just the same thing over and over.
Right. Yeah. Oh man.
They would have just given up on York at that point.
Sure.
Well, one thing that I was trying to do when I was reading it too is like, and I kind of do this with. It's funny. I don't do this so much when we're reading like, like cosmic or monster stuff.
Yeah.
But like when it's people, like real people.
Yeah.
I kind of like start thinking like, is that an appropriate response? Like, do we think that would be like something that people would actually do, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of go through that, like when you say like, this is the character, you
Yep.
know, she is trained, she's a secret agent, she's heroic, you know, like would her character be scared of a loud noise or whatever, right? Like, so I
Sure.
just try to think like, is that in character? And for the most part, Bran K. Vaughan doesn't really write like people so tied into a character. He always like
Yes, it's
surprises
open-ended
you
a
with
bit.
just some weird angle, like they
Yeah.
just do something that you're like,
Right.
well, that's wacky.
Mhm.
And then now the character's totally different, but like he kind of held true to most of it. And
Yeah.
I think too, like if people were in this situation, you know, their first response is there's no men. Well, how do we get men back? Well, there's
Mhm.
only one way to do that.
Right.
And so they just see Yorrick as like this tool, right?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
a prize.
Yeah, or prize, or
Yeah.
like wow, if we had the only male,
Right.
And then the other
For,
side of it is
leverage,
like,
yeah.
for them, they're like, this is the new world, and this is just
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
fine.
it.
We're
This
gonna
is how
figure out
we
how to
live
live
it.
from
Like-
Yeah,
now.
I think about like the prison arc, where it's
Yes.
essentially you find out the prisoners got released. It was all female, and so they were said, well, it's better than staying in the prison, and so they founded their own town.
yeah,
But they're all very like become pacifists.
yeah, they're like
essentially.
peaceful.
They
It's like,
one rule about staying in that town was nonviolent. You
Yep.
got to be nonviolent.
There were no
weapons.
weapons.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they couldn't really defend themselves, which is also kind of a trademark when the Amazons attack them.
and they were kind of used to like working together. For
Yeah,
a
Yeah.
common goal.
absolutely.
So it was like, all right, let's
So
do
that
it.
was a interesting.
They already
dynamic.
had like electricity back.
Yes.
Yeah, they were very
The
already
greenhouse
developed
and-
and things like that. They knew how to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And it was like the nicest town, the most
10
developed.
days later.
Yeah, it was kind of a pseudo paradise. Like
Rome. Was
they were
built in
like,
10
we
days.
could stay here, but they're like, but harm is going to keep coming to this town, and they have that dilemma.
Mhm.
And that was really interesting to explore that. Absolutely.
It's almost like they had as a storyline, like all these sort of what ifs. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
here's a civilization. Like, how can we get him to bump into them?
Sure.
Correct.
And then, like, what would the catalyst be now that there's a male and there's people chasing after him?
Sure.
Like, is he just constantly this harbinger of like, you know,
Yeah.
pain and suffering? Like-
Absolutely.
It's almost like they wrote the ideas of groups.
yes.
Right.
It
We're
is.
going
thing
back
you
to the group
wanted.
analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then was like, oh, I want him to run into all of these different
Yeah.
types of people.
Yeah.
How do I make this happen?
They like drew a map from
Yeah.
one end of the US to the other. Like,
Right.
these are all the people that are going to be right.
And I guess we haven't really explained who are the Amazons we keep referencing.
All right. So
How
let's
would-
go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
So he leaves with a team that knew his mom
From
Yep.
DC.
from DC.
Yeah, she kind of is running the government at this point.
Yes.
She's president.
Yep.
So then
Bomb drop there. Here you go.
he says,
drop.
okay, we got to go. Let's go. And like the first group he bumps into is the Amazons, right?
Yep.
In Boston.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it seemed like they immediately fell into this, like, we are this mythological society, and they voluntarily cut off their left breast, right?
Yes.
Because that's like what the Amazons did.
So that they can shoot better.
They could shoot their bows better. So they were like, okay, now we're all in this together. And that was sort of like that, you know, disfigurement to be part of this gang, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And they're, I won't say elitist, but they feel like join us or die kind of
Yeah,
attitude.
basically.
They're very much, they take on that role of like that.
That's so funny. I don't want to say
Survive.
elitist, but it's like join us or die. Like, yeah, that's pretty much that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they believe in that, you know, survival of the fittest, you know, strong survive.
They kill multiple people.
Right.
Like-
When they get word that there is one living male, they want to eliminate him. They
Mhm.
want him gone. They want
They want to kill him.
They want to kill him.
They just
Absolutely.
see that there's that one little chance of
Right.
ruining what they're trying to build.
I think they also want to take over the government. They want that power. They want to seek that rulership.
So you get that, which is like an extreme.
Yeah.
And then you get the prison, which
Yep.
is the other extreme.
Right.
Correct.
And then they start bumping into just people throughout their travels of just like, I would say they're more like living in the moment. They don't really have a
Yes.
plan, right? But like
Right.
they're just doing what they
Like
can.
like we were talking about the mechanic. The mechanic just wanted to fix people's like automobiles
She was
up or
fixing
their
cars and
bikes.
living,
yeah,
like-
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Trying to stay alive.
Right. She has like a little bunker that she stays in, and she's pretty content with her life. And she's just trying to help. And when she comes along with York, she feels like she could make a real difference. And then, you know, violence follows afterwards. But she was a really compelling character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was funny too that like, while they didn't know how to like trust one person to the next, but they still respected people's positions, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. They already seen what the ultimate extreme looks like.
they're like, I'm a politician. They're like, oh, all right, of what? But
Yeah.
if you want to be a politician of what we have, go ahead.
Right. Yeah.
No, it was kind of weird how respectful they were when they came up upon new people.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely. And maybe that was easier to write after you know what one extreme, like not your ultimate evil, but your extreme is. You can kind of dial back and kind of like, here's how this person would be, and here's somebody cool they could run into along
I
the
can see
road.
that.
I think about playing like D&D or something like that. Oh, he goes
Yeah.
top of the tavern, this tavern
Yeah.
over. Oh, you're going to go on this adventure. Here's this quest.
Or there was
Things
the
like
other
that.
agent that lives in a cabin who's lived off the grid for
Yeah,
years.
Yes.
right. The hermit.
Yes.
the wise sage.
She barely knows that this is happening.
Right. Yeah. She was also a secret agent, so they have that bond. But also, she kind of went off the deep end a little bit.
Yeah.
But she taught him a valuable lesson.
Yeah. But that's okay.
In a
Because
bit of
in the
a
end,
crazy way.
in the end,
Right.
you
You got because that was the lesson about like overcoming your fear of dying. I think
Yes.
it was something like that.
Well, yeah,
Or suicidal
because
tendencies.
Yeah, suicidal tendencies that he didn't necessarily know he had,
Yeah.
but it was something that was resonating.
well, I think because she was saying like, you are still throwing yourself in harm's way, not because you want to be a hero, but just because you're hoping that someone else will just resolve this for you. And
Right.
that
It's
part
kind of like the bystander.
yes, and
Yeah.
that part I thought was interesting because
Yeah.
he admitted, he goes, well, yeah, I woke up and every male died except me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
then
like a
it's
whole
sort of
panic
like
attack.
it's sort of like that, like the plane crashes and you're the only
Right.
survivor.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so you're like,
survivor guilt. Yeah.
yeah, you're like, what do I do now? Like,
Well, and then
why am I here?
Yeah, he admitted he thought about dying.
Yeah.
too.
Right.
Like,
And that's also another level of like what's the mental health of everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's different mental
everybody
health.
in this situation, and
Yeah,
how would you handle it?
right. So many layers to
Yeah.
dissect of this book.
And it is interesting to go back and think about like, what's the rhythm of this book, so to
Right.
speak. Like how is
The
he getting
pacing's
to- yeah.
great. That's one of the things I think. Yeah, now going back a little bit, the pacing of this book was I found very easy to get into, very easy to pick up on. It flowed really well. Taylor, this is your first comic. What did you think?
It was easy to read.
Yeah,
Like I guess I didn't want to put it down. I kept reading till I got to like the
of
end.
course. Yeah. So you binged it a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. I find myself doing that as well. This
Well-
one actually, I took a little bit more time just because I read like a 2 or 3 issue, like an arc, like the 2-3 issue arc. I paused a little bit. I came back another night and then I kept reading a little bit more
Yeah.
until like the very end. And then I was like, of our like 20 issues that we were reading, I was like,
Well, and like for our listeners too, the type of story that's being told is very modern. There's there's
Oh,
no mythology, there's no
Right.
lore, there's no like weird
It's
you know,
humans.
fantasy
Yeah.
Like,
names.
It's
Yeah.
a very mature read.
There's no like
Yeah.
swords of power and everything
Right.
else. It's pretty much just you're reading almost casual conversations
Right.
yeah.
that you would overhear, but then you're trying to piece together different personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's
Each
a lot
one
of pop
is-
culture references.
Yeah, we were talking about all the DC
A lot.
references. Yeah, they're like even because it's DC, like, oh, this is Superman one. Oh, there's Robin.
Yeah.
You could definitely pick it out. There's so many Easter eggs to just explore.
Or like the bald woman he calls Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah,
There's just a lot of-
I mean, we talked about this book came out between 2002 and 2008. There's
Yeah.
so many things you could take. You could go back. You could go forth a little bit.
Well, and the type of character that they make Yorrick,
Yeah.
I mean, he's not like a jock or a hero. He's not like
No.
a police officer.
Very invaluable.
No.
He's not a military
He's
man.
not a
He's just like a goofy
guy.
If I'm
pop
remembering right, he
culture
doesn't
guy.
even have a job at the
Right.
beginning.
He's an escape artist.
Who trains monkeys to help disabled people.
No, he
Right.
you're right. Yeah, but so he probably just spends his time watching TV and
Oh my God.
and YouTube, and so he's got
Yeah.
like a lot of culture
But
references.
you know what? Being a escape artist, that's the best like skill he could have had.
But I'm pretty sure the first scene is him like hanging upside down in a straitjacket. So,
Yeah.
or one of the first.
Right.
Well, so I took a lot of screenshots because when I read, I read this digitally. Andrew had the Omni, which is like
the
1,500 pages. And so I read it digitally
Oh, yep.
on Hoopla. Yeah. But when you take screenshots now in Hoopla, they're black.
Really?
Aw.
Yeah, it doesn't
So you
let
gotta
you.
like take them on your phone.
That's what I do.
Yes, it doesn't let you save it. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to remember this. And so I do a little screenshot. I didn't realize actually until I looked back, I was like,
Aw.
oh, they're all black, which is a good way to like not just screenshot an entire comic. And
That's
now
your
you
fun
have
fact
it.
for the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone, don't steal digital images, but still, if you're reading digitally, it's interesting to kind of keep track of some, memorable moments.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the artwork, Taylor?
I think it was cool. It was like always every picture was very detailed, which I was like, I guess not expecting. I should have, but
Right. So the artist, or at least the main penciler for what we read, was Pia Guerra, and she's a Spanish artist. And so, and the team that did all the coloring and the inking really made the story feel like kind of modern and very accessible, I would say. It's very detailed. The faces are very emotional, so like what tone we're taking. And I think it's very accessible to audiences. Any thoughts?
Well,
Bounce on.
Andrew is like, and now you. I just think it's another one of those that are just very like simple, so that
Sure.
it helps you
yeah.
get through the page.
Yeah.
Like the skies are just one color. The grass is
Sure.
all like grass with a shadow.
Yeah.
And so there's not too much, even when they're in rooms and stuff. Like, I mean, no matter
Yeah.
where you
The
skip-
most
I can't
artsy
see
they
that.
got was the theater arc.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
When what was it they were doing? The Wizard of Oz.
But like,
I can't see that. Like it was easy to read and you weren't, I guess, staring at a picture on a page for like 10 minutes
Yeah.
while you're trying to figure out what all was happening.
well, like all of the people are very up close. So it's mostly just focusing on face, right?
Yeah.
So it's like people. And then when you, and the
There's some, like,
colors,
silhouette and shadows.
yeah, the
and
colors
things
are
like that
all
when they want
generally
to.
the same. Like even here, it's just like blue sky, blue sky, blue sky,
Yeah.
blue sky. Like they don't go
Yeah.
too much into it.
Mhm.
But the idea is that you are instantly recognizing the characters, so you don't have to like wonder like, is this that person or what?
Sure,
And-
because when you have so many characters,
was-
you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
develop what they look like.
Yeah.
So that way you as the reader can focus. This is who this is.
And I bet some of this
Differentiate
was
them.
based on just like, we want to get these issues out fast because we have a
Sure.
big story to tell and we want to
Right.
just tell it.
Yeah.
And sometimes with comics, just so you know, Taylor, they'll say, hey, it's a monthly comic. And then you're like, oh, actually, we missed this month's deadline. So now it's bi-monthly. And then like, oh, shoot. Now we got to put a
Yeah.
pause on
I'm
3
used to
months.
that with podcasts.
Yeah, so
so
it's like,
Right,
oh.
absolutely.
TV shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And it's like, it's because they're so bogged down with the artwork and the lettering and the coloring.
yeah.
Because
and
there's every
production
process
and-
has production of putting it all
Every
the pieces
single
together.
thing has a different person working
Yes.
on it.
Seldomly does one person work on the whole thing. And when they do, that's great. They can see their vision till the end. But like when you're working with a team of 10, 15 people,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
it's a lot. So you have to like kind of like, all right, this is your deadline. This is what you can have. What are we trying to
And especially some of these pages only have 1 or 2
yeah.
text bubbles on it. So then you think
Right.
like, well, how long do I have to spend?
And
on
there's
this
not a lot of
page?
narration.
Right? Yeah.
Compared to what we have read in the past, there isn't a lot of narration. It's
True.
mostly told through dialogue. So
Okay.
sometimes they'll have like at the bottom of like a panel or something like that,
They'll
they'll be like,
explain a
what
little
are
bit.
they
Oh.
thinking? Or what is the narrator trying to say about this? What are they feeling?
I think, yeah, almost all of this was dialogue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unique, I guess, to what we've read
Yeah,
in some of
that's
this
true.
stuff.
And it kind of pushed the story through
Yeah.
to just say like, yeah, this person got shot and we're moving on to the next.
Yeah.
like-
there isn't like an overly detailed explanation.
Yeah.
Well, and they could do that because I don't think there was really any time that Yorrick was alone.
Fair.
At the
True.
beginning, he was with Ampersand and like
Yeah.
was talking to him. So through the entire thing, he was with another person
Yeah.
at least.
Right.
And I thought a lot of the colors were just like the whole like
Yeah, unless you
color
were like
palette.
flashing back or something
Yeah.
super obvious. There's Joker. There's Joker.
I guess I didn't even notice that.
Like the color palette they use is
Yeah.
is very much the same. So like
Yeah.
the tone,
Yeah.
there's no colors jumping out awkwardly or anything like that. It's just pretty straightforward. So I think the art lends the whole story to move along, read,
Yeah.
read. Yes, they're outside. Yes, they're inside. Yes,
Right.
they're in a building. Okay, read,
Yes.
read.
It should
You
be
know,
obvious.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, they're in a room that has bookcases, but okay, next.
It
know,
didn't like take away from
Right.
keeping the story going.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and I wonder if that's sort of because that kind of happens in Saga a little bit. I mean, there's a lot to look at in Saga, but like
Yeah.
you get the idea that the people are all just sort of one line, and it's just like
Okay.
there's no crazy cross hatching and
No, because they have so many different alien species
Yeah, they just wanna get
that you have to
moved.
make it a very distinguishable character or distinguishable planet or
It's like
Things like
each
that.
character is there to do a thing.
yes,
And then they're gone.
right,
Yeah.
Which kind of
Mhm.
is how this works.
yeah. Oh, I think so.
Each group or person, they were
Yeah.
there to do their thing and then they were out of the story.
Right. Yeah.
it's like the Clone Wars cartoon versus Arcane.
Right. Yes.
Like some just takes a while and some doesn't. You just
Right.
move along.
Yeah. One of the funny panels that I came across in the theater arc was they have a poster for Ampersand with the play that like they find the monkey Ampersand goes on like he gets loose and they develop a play because they're a bunch of thespians and they're trying to give art back to the community and they bring up this poster with Ampersand's face and it goes the fish, the bicycle, the traveling the fish, the bicycle, traveling theater trope proudly presents The Last Man, and it's a picture of the monkey's face. I love that.
It's Ampersand.
And then there's like why and like
And then the mayor of the town gets mad and rips it in half.
yeah, because she's like,
Yeah.
you can't show this trash to people, but it's too out there. Oh.
She's the governor.
Yeah, that was funny. I love that. I love that. But
Well, so we read through the 2 books, and
Yep.
are you going to continue reading through the rest of the?
you
hobby?
know,
I know.
I'm
He doesn't
let's
know, it's a
see,
lot.
I'm on page.
You're a third of the way through.
Sure, I'm on.
You
page.
kept going.
I kept going for a little bit. I'm on 596, so I would
All right.
run.
You're further than.
Oh, I did
Yeah.
because I wanted to refresh the characters before.
He's,
Oh.
he's
Okay.
almost halfway.
Right. Yeah, and then we just start getting into like when the 3rd volume starts and into his sister Yorrick's sister
Hero.
her story, and she is the complete opposite of Yorrick, whereas Yorrick is very carefree, kind of silly, sarcastic, whereas Hero almost subscribes to the Amazons, kind of joins them, and she's kind of like
needs-
apprehensive.
Yeah, she needs validation. All
Yes,
the
that's a
Yes.
good way to
time.
say
And
it.
he just doesn't really care.
He
Yeah.
does not.
Absolutely. Whereas he could probably survive on his own of some sorts, or he would give himself some certain direction, maybe more independent. Maybe
Well, he
Hero-
did get himself all the way to DC to his mom by
yeah,
himself.
right, and
And
so
hidden from
right,
everyone.
and Hero is the complete opposite, where she needs that group mentality, that
Yeah.
guidance, that fellowship. Also, before we skip on the art, the covers of each series are done by J.G. Jones. We haven't talked about
They're
him.
very cool.
Ooh, yeah.
J.G.
very
Jones
pretty.
is very much one of the big players in the cover art game.
Yeah.
Oh.
And really just only does the covers.
Yes,
Oh,
he only does the
okay.
covers.
Yeah. Just, you're not going to get a
he
whole book
did-
of his stuff.
Yeah, he
Got
did
it.
the first 17 issues of the covers.
Okay.
And these are like of like a mural level. Like it's very fantastic. It's very detailed. Something that we were kind of going like the opposite of the interiors.
That's yeah. I
Yeah.
noticed that, but I like reading through. I didn't realize that that's what those were.
But that was
yeah.
the
Well, I
natural-
didn't realize that it was switching books. Or
Sure.
whatever.
And that's something, as a new reader, like that's something to take note. Or like, what is a cover when you're reading a collected edition?
But it was also kind of nice that the story just kept going.
yeah,
That like there were no major breaks really.
right.
That's sort of like the opening to each episode
Yeah.
of a
yeah,
But it is also cool because like we talk about collected editions a lot. We talk about hardcovers and omnis and absolutes and stuff. And when they do collected comics, it's really, really, really nice that they keep the covers in. They keep the like the forewords and the afterwords, and they keep in the sketches and the backgrounds, and they try to put as much in it as they can. They're not allowed to keep in all of the advertisements. So like if someone put an advertisement in for Mountain Dew or whatever, they'd take that out. But it's really a nice reading experience just to see how it was originally intended to draw comic book purchasers. Like when you're in a comic book store, you're looking at covers, you're like, what is this one? Because that first one with him and the monkey sort of hanging upside down, that's a pretty iconic. Like I remember seeing that in comic stores.
Like it was probably intended to be like, hey.
Yeah. You're like, why is this guy hanging upside down?
Like in the extras, like they have the sketchbook of like how they develop the character design. What does it look like? It's all on the pencils. So
I flipped through that a little bit.
I was like, that's pretty cool to see, especially like if you're trying to break into comics. Or you're trying to you love like the development process.
I feel like there was more in the ones that I read than
absolutely, and that could be because this is kind of an older omnibus as well, and also it's a huge page count.
Yeah, there are.
So that could be something unique to the hardcovers that were collected because that was like 10, 15 issues. 10 issues.
10 issues each,
and we read the first 2. So
and they just kind of like pull that out.
Sometimes they have like the scripts in the alternate covers, variant covers.
I also thought the last thing too, like they give Yorrick a lot of disguises. Like he's always changing clothes, but then he's just like out of it. He's like, he's got a mask on for like one page and then he takes the mask off.
Okay. In the show, he wears a mask almost the whole time.
Okay.
I mean, he does wear the mask quite frequently, but it's something that sticks with.
He takes it off a lot more in the comics.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
He literally walks up and they're like to a new group and they're like, oh, who are you? And he's
pretty
like,
much.
I'm a man. I'm like, oh my God. It's
really
like,
he takes it off.
Your mask on.
Like, dude.
Well, you can't really fake a female accent.
Well, and
a female voice.
You can't keep your main character masked up all the time, I guess.
True, we've learned that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because then it kind of you lose the personality of it sometimes.
But otherwise,
unless you're Batman.
Yeah, the read. I think the read is real smooth. It's good. The storyline is just intriguing enough to keep wanting you to come back and say like, aha, maybe this issue they'll give a little more breadcrumb to understand like what's happening here.
Right.
And there are some surprising, like, there's a lot of pages end with bang.
Yeah.
And then you
love a good cliffhanger.
Yeah. Then you like turn the page like, what's going on? Like, who got shot?
A lot of them, or even the like each comic I felt like ended with something.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, because like where we ended it ended with a cliffhanger.
Yeah. That's always like the last page is this full page spread of like this
some
aha
kind of
moment.
Cliffhanger. Yeah.
Like, hey, what about me? And you're like, oh, okay. And that keeps you looking for the next comic.
You're going to go buy the next one.
A good writer will do that.
Yep. You'll go buy the next comic because you're like, oh my gosh, this person's back.
That's exactly what happens.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
It's the drop.
That's where that one is.
Yeah. Hero. Oh my God.
The bait and switch and drop.
Right.
That is 100% by design.
Absolutely. So after reading this series, Taylor, for 2 parts, would you continue reading this comic?
I think I'm going to go watch the show, and then actually I am planning to finish reading it.
Okay.
Yes.
You're more than welcome to borrow.
Compare the show.
And 2 parts, after reading the series or another time, would you consider picking up another comic?
I think I would if it was like, I am not into the superhero thing, and I think
of course
that's where people generally think comics are.
Yep.
But like, I think more stuff in the futuristic or dystopian realm, I would read.
The real people.
In the graphic novel.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the graphic novel. Yeah, because I think, comics could get stereotyped and pigeonholed into like the superhero genres, but I think it's evolved so much since like the 60s and the 70s that, we have so many interesting stories, especially once we cover on the podcast.
Well, and there's a lot of them that like I didn't never realize were comics that
absolutely.
you've told me are comics now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and congratulations. Now you're one of those people that can watch a show and be like, that's not how it was in the comic.
You could have that.
That's not.
Yeah. You're going to have that snarky response.
Go annoy people.
Actually in the comic.
Okay. Hot question. What was your favorite adaptation? of like book to movie or movie to like book?
I liked the book better because I saw there were more.
Or it could be this, but or like in general.
Oh, in general.
Yeah.
Ooh. It's actually a recent one.
Okay.
Uglies. It just came out on Netflix.
Okay.
Book to movie.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they did a surprisingly good job with the movie.
Okay.
The first movie was the first book. There's 4 books in the series.
Right.
And Netflix actually did a very good job. I was extremely surprised.
Yep.
It's a dystopian world where
Again, it's
of course. Yes.
You're not typecasted. No.
Start with that.
Yes. When you turn 16, you get a medical procedure that turns you what they consider pretty. And basically you get full plastic surgery.
Sounds like something out like Black Mirror.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a whole world where that's just what happens.
Sure.
So that was
Yeah.
probably one of the best ones I've seen anytime recently.
Right. I think the One Piece adaptation's pretty faithful to what to do in the manga. That was one of my favorites. Do you have a favorite like adaptation or something you've seen that was done really good?
Hopefully tomorrow I'll be watching Eternaut. And
Okay,
it'll be
yeah.
very, very good. So,
That might be a spoiler for another.
yes,
episode.
yes. That's
Yeah.
a great comic, but that comic is the only sort of thing that I'll be comparing is that the comic came out in like the 60s
Right.
from a serial comic in a newspaper. It was a comic
Okay.
strip. So I just want to see how they're going to translate that into
Okay.
a show.
Dun,
you know,
dun,
like
dun.
dun, dun, dun.
I have watched the Riverdale, which I know is a comic, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh,
And
okay.
I've heard that one's actually pretty good.
Yes.
Interesting.
Archie. Right?
Yes,
Yes.
it's based off the Archie comics. My mom keeps telling me I need to read them.
Okay.
She read them.
Yeah.
They're like the best selling of ever.
Yeah.
Archie's always been like
Oh.
up there, number
Yeah.
one.
It just keeps going, just like Yorrick.
Yep.
All
Keep
right.
going, Yorrick. All right, we're
Yep.
rooting for you.
Absolutely. Any last thoughts?
No.
All right. Great series. It won 3 Eisner Awards and probably so many more. We definitely are going to keep reading this book, and we'll hopefully like see and compare what the show is like and kind of diverge more into it. Taylor shared with us in the pre-show that the only reason why they didn't make a season 2 is because it didn't make enough money.
Yep.
Womp womp. So we can only dream what that could have been. But until next time, this has been another episode of Bam Pow Comic Hour with your hosts, Andrew Glonner
Chris Ramos.
and
Taylor May.
signing off.